Music Alliance Event Review.
Welcome to the Highlights Show.
It's great to be here. I am honestly still just processing everything we just witnessed.
Oh, same. My brain is absolutely buzzing right now.
Right. Like, we literally just closed our laptops on that Music Alliance track critique live stream. And man,
It was intense.
so intense. Like, if you were sitting here with us listening to this, we basically just watched a panel of top-tier industry mentors brutally dissect, I don't know, dozens of songs in real time.
Brutally is definitely the right word for it.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway for me, which was so surprising, had absolutely nothing to do with, like, emotion or raw talent or waiting for the muse to strike. It was entirely about math.
Yeah, it was this surgical dismantling of the whole romanticized idea of songwriting. Because, I mean, we all grew up with this mythology,
Like
right?
this leading heart artist in the studio.
Exactly. The artist laboring in a dimly lit room, pouring their soul into a mic, and magically a hit is just born out of pure, unbridled emotion.
Right.
But this panel completely bypassed that narrative. They just zeroed in on one unifying question. What actually separates a bedroom demo from a commercially viable, signable track?
And the answer, over and over, was basically structural engineering.
Structural engineering. That is exactly the phrase.
Because you watch a stream like this, where the PR filters are completely off, and you realize the sheer amount of commercial hit-making that relies on, well, rigid mathematical realities.
Yes.
Like, let's unpack that whole 4 and 8 bar phrasing rule they kept hammering on. To a lot of people, that sounds, I don't know, overly technical or even stifling.
Yeah, it sounds like putting art in a box.
Right. So why is this panel of veterans so utterly obsessed with divisible math?
Well, because human brains are fundamentally pattern recognition machines. I mean, we evolved to seek out symmetry and predictable cycles.
That's how we navigate the world.
Exactly. And in Western music, we are deeply conditioned to expect a musical idea to resolve in groupings of 4 or 8. So when a song adheres to that recognizable structure, the listener's brain actually relaxes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it requires way less cognitive load to process the song. So subconsciously, the listener can anticipate the drum fill, or they feel the swell of the pre-chorus,
Right.
and they know exactly when the drop is coming.
And when it hits exactly on the grid where their brain predicted it.
There is a literal dopamine release.
Yeah.
That is exactly the feeling of a song hitting hard.
Okay. That makes so much sense. And conversely, when you break that math, you just break the trance.
You lose them.
The listener's brain gets confused, the dopamine gets withheld, and they just skip the track. And there was that one specific critique that illustrated this perfectly.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, someone submitted a track, and the verses dragged on for a massive 32 bars.
It just kept going.
It really did. The panel basically stopped the track halfway through and delivered an absolute veto. Like, the urgency in their voices was palpable. They were just like, you have to get to the chorus earlier.
They were trying to instill a sense of absolute urgency regarding audience attention. Because in an era of, infinite streaming, algorithms, TikTok.
Yeah, the competition is insane.
Right. An artist is asking for a listener's most precious commodity, which is their time. So if you force someone to wander through a 32-bar meander before giving them the payoff, they're gone.
You haven't rewarded their investment quickly enough.
Exactly.
And there was a submission by Charles Blake called Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. That one really drove this point home for me.
Oh, yeah, because they actually praised the core idea of that one.
They did. The hook was really solid. It had this genuine earworm potential, but they just ripped into the overall map of the track because the bar structure was totally inconsistent.
The flow was entirely disjointed.
Right. And it's such a devastating lesson to learn live on a stream. Like, a phenomenal hook cannot save a poorly mapped track.
It really can't.
Yeah.
The melody might be a 10 out of 10, but if the pacing is erratic, the listener gets fatigued trying to navigate the song just to find that hook.
You know, I kind of look at it like architecture.
Okay, how so?
Like, you can possess the most beautiful, expensive, jaw-dropping Italian leather sofa in the world, and that's your massive chorus.
Right. Okay.
And you've placed it perfectly in the living room. But if the hallway leading to that living room is this dark, winding 32-bar maze with dead ends and flickering lights.
Nobody's ever going to sit on the sofa.
Exactly. They're going to get frustrated and leave the house entirely before they even see it.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
Yeah.
You really have to nail the floor plan before you even think about the interior design.
Yeah.
But, even if an artist absolutely nailed that structural math even if they built the perfect hallway, the panel was still ruthlessly tossing tracks aside.
Oh, don't even get me started on the production critique.
Because an optimized structure gets completely destroyed if the listener can't physically hear it through the mix. The production critiques were where things got incredibly granular.
And brutal. I mean, they took 0 prisoners when it came to production. Specifically, the absolute unyielding war they waged on excessive vocal reverb.
Oh man, the wet mix. It was the #1 offender of the night. Easily.
It really was. They were calling out how many artists try to hide behind this giant, muddy blanket of echo. But I do want to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, let's hear.
Because I found myself actually arguing with my screen during this segment. Isn't heavy reverb frequently a completely valid artistic choice?
Oh, sure.
I mean, who determines the line between stylized atmosphere and just audio mud? Like, think about the early days of Billie Eilish, or massive genres like shoegaze and dream pop. The reverb is the signature sound.
Right.
If Billie Eilish had submitted an early demo of Ocean Eyes to this panel before she blew up, wouldn't they have told her the vocals were too breathy and washed out?
It's a completely fair challenge.
Yeah.
But there is a massive mechanical difference between what a top-tier producer does with reverb and what these artists were doing on the stream.
Okay, like what?
So in a Billie Eilish track, the reverb is incredibly controlled. A producer like Phineas uses pre-delay.
Right, the timing trick.
Yeah, which means the reverb doesn't actually kick in until a few milliseconds after the vocal transient hits. And he aggressively EQs the reverb so it doesn't clash with the low-mid frequencies. So the vocal stays clear. Exactly. The vocal remains fiercely intimate, while the space around it feels huge. What the panel was hearing on these live stream submissions wasn't stylistic genius. It was just acoustic camouflage.
Acoustic camouflage. So artists using plugins out of fear, basically.
Precisely. They are insecure about their high-fidelity, dry vocal recordings. They hear a naked, vulnerable take, notice slight pitch imperfections or, harsh mouth noises, and they just panic.
So they just slap a generic, massive cathedral reverb preset on the master vocal chain?
Right. And from an audio engineering standpoint, that physically smears the transients. The frequencies just wash over each other, creating this phasey, muddy mess where the lyrical consonants completely disappear. You literally cannot understand the words they are singing.
Which brings us right to galactic currency.
Oh, yep. That was the textbook example right there.
It really was. That track got flagged instantly. It was absolutely drowning in vocal reverb to the point where the lyrics were totally indecipherable.
Just a wash of noise.
Yeah, and to compound the issue, the structural math was missing. It completely lacked a chorus. It was just this floating, wet, ambient wander.
Now contrast that immediately with Crystal Rose's track. Beautifully broken.
Oh, night and day.
The absolute second that track hit the stream, the entire chat shifted. The panel literally sat up straighter. They flagged it immediately as a commercial standout.
Because it sounded like it belonged on a major Nashville playlist tomorrow morning. But mechanically, what was doing the heavy lifting there? Why did it work?
It was the confidence of the mix. The vocals were completely upfront, crisp, and exposed. The production actually allowed the song to breathe.
Yeah, you could hear everything.
Right, and if the vocal sounded a bit thin in a certain section, instead of washing it out with reverb, the producer layered real tight vocal harmonies behind it to thicken the frequency band.
Ah, that's smart.
They utilized dynamic contrast, stripping everything away just before the chorus to make the drop feel massive. That kind of naked vulnerability is, ironically, exactly what makes a track sound bulletproof and professional.
It's so fascinating how the instinct to hide imperfections actually exposes an artist as an amateur.
It really does.
But, if we are talking about the instinct to hide behind digital tools, we have to talk about the absolute grenade that got thrown into the middle of this session.
Oh, boy.
The single most polarizing issue on the table right now.
Navigating artificial intelligence.
Exactly. AI. Several tracks during the critique were actively flagged by the panel as being heavily AI influenced, specifically using generation engines like Suno.
Right.
Now, if you spend 5 minutes on any music production forum today, it is pure apocalyptic doom and gloom about this. But the panel's reaction was surprisingly grounded, wasn't it?
It was. They were incredibly pragmatic. There was no pearl clutching about the death of art. They just frankly acknowledged that the technology is here, and honestly, it is getting terrifyingly convincing.
It really is. But they were also very clear on how they were spotting it, which I found super interesting. Like, we hear these AI tracks and think they sound flawless, but the panel was actively picking out audio artifacts. What were they actually hearing?
Well, the panel is trained to listen for the uncanny valley of audio. AI engines right now really struggle with high-frequency phase coherence.
So the highs get messy.
Exactly. So cymbals and hi-hats often sound swishy or metallic in a very unnatural way. But even more importantly, the panel was listening to the grid.
The grid.
Yeah, an AI might generate a mathematically flawless melody, quantized perfectly to the millisecond, but it completely lacks the human pocket.
The pocket, that slight hesitation.
Yes, the micro imperfections. A great human drummer doesn't play perfectly on the grid. They might lay back on the snare just a few milliseconds to give the track a laid-back, heavy groove.
Or a singer taking a breath.
Right. A human singer takes a sharp intake of breath before a difficult vocal run. They push and pull against the tempo based on the emotion of the lyric. AI just lacks that intent.
So the mentors advised treating AI strictly as an advanced arrangement assistant, like a hyper-capable demo tool.
Exactly. Use it to get the idea out.
But the directive was, if you want a real commercial release, you have to eventually strip the AI out and replace it with real human studio production. Real session players.
Yes.
And that is where I have to call a timeout.
Uh-oh. Why?
Because if a kid in a bedroom is using AI to get a massive orchestral pop sound because they are flat broke, isn't telling them to strip out the AI and hire real session musicians, just reinforcing a massive financial barrier.
That's huge debate right now.
Isn't that just gatekeeping commercial success to people who can actually afford a $500 a day studio drummer?
I mean, that is the exact tension tearing the indie community apart right now.
Yeah.
And it's a vital question. But I really don't think the panel was advocating for spending thousands of dollars you don't have.
Okay, then what were they saying?
They were advocating for the necessity of the human imprint. You don't need a $500 session drummer. You need to take the AI demo, use it as a map, and then figure out how to creatively replace those elements with yourself or with your local community of musicians.
So it's about the effort.
Yeah, sample your own pots and pans, record your own imperfect vocals, collaborate with friends. Because commercial music, at the highest level of breaking an artist, relies on narrative.
The story behind the music.
Exactly. If a track is entirely AI generated, who is the audience actually connecting with? Where is the shared human experience?
That's true.
However, from a purely audio engineering standpoint, the gap is closing rapidly. The line between a generated demo and a final track is blurring at a terrifying speed.
Which is why the panel was so insistent on transparency.
Yes, and on utilizing human replacements wherever possible, just to anchor the track in reality.
Because authenticity is ultimately the only currency that matters when you are trying to build a real fan base. But, let's look at the bigger picture here. Why bother? Why subject yourself to this level of scrutiny? Why agonize over the exact millisecond pre-delay of your reverb, or painstakingly map out every 4-bar transition, or spend weeks re-recording an AI vocal take?
It's a lot of work.
It is, but the panel kept pointing toward one specific endgame, the ultimate tier of commercial viability.
Sync licensing.
The promised land. And for anyone operating in this space, you know how incredibly lucrative sync can be. It pays the rent, it sustains careers.
Absolutely. Placing music in TV, film, ads, it's the dream.
But I really appreciated how the panel didn't just say, go get sync placements. They explained why sync demands this brutal mathematical perfection.
Right, because music supervisors and video editors are not listening to your song to enjoy the vibe. They just aren't.
Right.
They are using your song as a functional tool to drive a visual narrative.
Yeah, they're looking at a screen.
Literally. When an editor drops a track into Premiere or Final Cut, they are looking at the audio waveform on a visual timeline. If your verse is a 32-bar, reverb-drenched wash of ambient sound, the waveform just looks like a solid brick.
Right, there are no visual transients. There is nothing to cut the camera angle to.
Exactly.
They need a snare hit to cut from a wide shot to a close-up.
Yes, they need the track to build tension, hit a massive transient on the chorus drop, and then immediately clear out of the frequency spectrum when the lead actor starts speaking dialogue.
Because the music supervisor does not have the time to EQ out your muddy reverb.
No way.
Or chop up a meandering verse to make it fit a 15-second commercial spot. The track has to be engineered for that utility from its inception. That is why the structural math is non-negotiable.
It has to work right out of the box.
But man, getting your songwriting to that level of absolute clinical utility requires an incredibly thick skin.
Oh, the creative crucible of this process is intense.
The host of the webinar actually paused at one point to explicitly acknowledge the emotional toll. And you really have to respect that. It is profoundly exhausting to be creatively vulnerable.
It really is.
Like, you spend a month in your bedroom studio pouring your lived experience into a lyric, obsessing over a mix, and then you submit it to a live stream, and a panel of experts mathematically dissects it and rejects it in 60 seconds flat.
It feels like a personal rejection, even though it's purely technical. I mean, you are putting a piece of your identity on the chopping block in front of hundreds of people.
Which makes the infrastructure of this specific community so vital. They aren't just operating a slaughterhouse. They've built this massive safety net to help artists survive the process and actually improve.
The Music Alliance ecosystem they kept referencing during the stream is incredibly robust.
It is.
The Slack channels alone provide a completely different level of engagement.
Yes. They kept directing people toward the community tools. Like, they have this one song a day channel, which just sounds like a brutal but brilliant exercise in letting go of perfectionism. Totally. And they have a dedicated AI channel to debate the exact philosophical and technical hurdles we just discussed. They hold weekly office hours. But my absolute favorite resource they highlighted was the post 7 p.m. Ask Me windows.
That is such a critical cool-down period.
Yeah.
For the artists whose tracks were rejected, or even those who were just too intimidated to submit, having a dedicated window for one-on-one deeper advice after the harsh spotlight of the main panel. It's essential.
It totally reminded me of a heavy lifting gym.
Oh, I like that.
Like, you walk into that live feedback session and you are putting maximum weight on the bar.
Yeah.
You are pushing your songwriting muscles to absolute failure.
Right.
You get critiqued, you realize your 8-bar structure is completely broken, the bar falls, and it physically hurts your ego in the moment. You feel completely weak and exposed. But logging into that one song a day Slack channel or joining a late night Ask Me session, it is literally having a reliable spotter.
That is exactly what it is. The spotter doesn't lift the weight for you, but they make sure you don't get crushed.
Right. The mentors are standing over you saying, okay, the bar slipped. Your vocal reverb was way too wet and your hook was buried, but you didn't die.
Yeah. Let's try again.
Let's adjust your grip. Let's strip back the pre-delay, shorten the verse by 16 bars, and push the track back up. You survive the rejection because the community is carrying the excess weight.
And that repetition, that constant cycle of muscle failure, immediate critique, adjustment, and community support, that is the only way the muscle actually grows.
Exactly.
That is the unglamorous, grueling reality of how a bedroom producer eventually lands a massive sync placement in a global television campaign. It's not a muse whispering in their ear. It's just 1,000 hours of structured failure.
So true. So bringing this all back around to you, listening to us unpack this, I want to leave you with a philosophical question to chew on because it's been rolling around in my head ever since we closed the live stream.
Let's hear it.
We have spent this entire conversation dissecting the strict, unyielding, almost mathematical laws of commercial viability, the rigid 4-bar and 8-bar loops, the absolute necessity of hitting the chorus early, the ruthless demand for stripped back, surgically exposed vocals, and the necessity of composing for the visual transients of sync licensing.
The absolute boundaries of the commercial box.
Yes. So here is the question. Do those incredibly strict mathematical rules actually stifle true organic creativity? Or do those rigid, unyielding boundaries force an artist to become genuinely brilliant in order to stand out inside the box?
Paradox of constraints.
Exactly. Think about it. Is it harder to paint a masterpiece when the canvas is infinitely large and you can do whatever you want? Or is it a greater mark of genius to paint a masterpiece when you are restricted to a tiny, perfectly square 4x4 frame?
That's a great point. It is often the tightest, most unforgiving limitations that produce the most innovative art. When you can't rely on endless time or a washed-out atmosphere, you have to rely on purely brilliant songwriting.
It is definitely something to sit with the next time you open up your DAW to write a track. Or even just the next time you turn on a Spotify playlist and try to spot the structural math hiding behind the magic.
Absolutely.
And listen, Us just sitting here verbally breaking down this webinar does not even come close to doing the actual experience justice. You genuinely need to carve out the time to go watch the full live stream from start to finish.
You really do. You have to physically hear the before and after tracks. Hearing the muddy frequencies of a bad mix and then feeling the physical snap of a perfectly structured dry chorus drop it completely shifts your perspective.
It rewires how you hear music, so go track down the video of the stream, take notes, and brace yourself for the math. Anyway, my brain is completely fried in the best way possible. I desperately need caffeine.
Oh, I am right there with you. Let's go grab that coffee.
Catch you later.